The Chicago Mafia boss thought his pregnant wife would forgive his affair. By sunrise, she had vanished. But the truth was even crueler. Evelyn Crowe had not driven through the storm to save her marriage. She had come to tell Alexander she was carrying his child, then leave him for good. Rain hammered the black iron gates of his Lake Forest estate as she stood outside with an ultrasound photograph trembling in her hand. Inside, the most feared man in Chicago was kissing another woman. Outside, his wife was learning what betrayal looks like when there is nowhere left to hide. What happened next was not just a kidnapping. It was a reckoning about power obsession, broken trust, and the price of realizing someone's value too late. Stay until the end. Like the video and comment the city you are watching from. That was the last moment Evelyn Crowe still belonged to the life behind those iron gates. By the time her taillights disappeared into the rain, Alexander Crowe had already turned away from the study window. He did not know she had been standing outside. He did not know about the ultrasound photograph in her hand. He knew only that his phone had lit up again with her name and that answering would require him to step into a conversation he had postponed for 3 months. Claire Bennett stood beside the fireplace with one of his white shirts hanging loosely over her shoulders. The room was warm lit by low lamps and the orange glow of burning oak. Beyond the glass, November rain swept across the lawn in silver sheets. Xander poured whiskey into a clean tumbler. His phone vibrated against the side table. Evelyn Crowe. Claire glanced at the screen. That makes 9. Xander lifted the glass but did not drink. She will call back tomorrow. She is calling now. He looked at Claire. There was no accusation in her voice. That was one of the things he had liked about her in the beginning. She rarely asked for more than he was prepared to give. She entered a room, quietly listened when he spoke, and never demanded that he explain the parts of himself he preferred to keep locked away. Evelyn had once possessed that same patience. The difference was that Evelyn had eventually understood patience could become another word for disappearing. The phone stopped vibrating. For 3 seconds, the room returned to silence. Then it rang again. Claire walked toward the side table. Xander's voice hardened. Leave it. Her hand stopped before touching the phone. I was only going to bring it to you. I said leave it. Claire lowered her hand. The phone continued ringing between them. Xander stared at Evelyn's name until the screen went dark. 14 miles away, Evelyn listened to the unanswered call end. She was still driving north when she placed the phone in the cup holder. Rain blurred the road so completely that the white lane markers seemed to dissolve beneath her tires. Her eyes burned, but she refused to cry. Crying would have meant that some part of her had still expected a different answer. She looked at the ultrasound photograph on the passenger seat. The image was mostly shadow, a small shape, a bright curve, something too new to resemble a person and already powerful enough to rearrange every decision she thought she had made. At the clinic that afternoon, the technician had turned the monitor toward her. There, the woman had said gently, "That flicker is the heartbeat." Evelyn had stared at the screen. The room had been cool and dim, smelling faintly of disinfectant and lavender hand soap. A paper sheet covered her legs. Her purse sat on the chair beside the examination table with divorce papers hidden beneath a paperback novel. The technician had smiled. 8 weeks. Evelyn had repeated the words quietly. 8 weeks. The timing placed conception during the final weeks she had still been living at the estate. Back when Xander came home after midnight and showered before touching her. Back when his shirts sometimes carried a perfume she did not own. Back when Evelyn still asked where he had been and Xander still answered with a single word. Business. The technician had wiped the gel from Evelyn's stomach and left the room to give her privacy. The doctor entered several minutes later. She was a woman in her 50s with calm eyes and a voice that made difficult questions sound survivable. Is the pregnancy wanted? Evelyn had looked again at the frozen image on the monitor. The baby is. The doctor waited. And the marriage? Evelyn's hand moved toward the purse containing the divorce papers. That is a different question. The marriage had not always felt like something she needed to escape. 6 years earlier, Alexander Crowe had found her standing beside a painting at a charity auction in the ballroom of the Drake Hotel. She had been 27, working for a foundation that restored public libraries across Chicago. He had been 33 and already carried the reputation that followed him into every room. People lowered their voices when he passed. Men who owned buildings stepped aside for him. Women watched him from behind champagne glasses. Evelyn had not known the full shape of his world then. She knew the Crowe name appeared on shipping companies, restaurants, construction firms, and campaign donations. She knew there were stories that newspapers refused to print because stories required witnesses, and witnesses around Alexander Crowe had a habit of forgetting. At the auction, Xander had raised his paddle for the painting Evelyn was studying. The bid doubled. She looked at him. "You do not even like it." He had seemed amused. "You can tell that from across the room." "You looked at the room before you looked at the painting." His eyes had settled on her with sudden attention. "And what does that tell you? That you are buying an audience, not art." No one spoke to Alexander Crowe that way. Evelyn had not understood that yet. He lowered the paddle. "You want it. I want it to go to the library project." Xander looked toward the stage. Then he raised the paddle again and tripled the previous bid. The painting sold to him. The following morning it arrived at Evelyn's office with a note. For the library. The audience was unnecessary. She had laughed. That was the first mistake, though she would not think of it that way for years. Their early marriage had been built from private moments no one else would have believed. Xander cooking eggs at 2 a.m. because Evelyn had missed dinner. Xander sitting on the floor beside her when her mother was in surgery. Xander learning the names of every employee at the neighborhood library she loved. He had once driven through a snowstorm because she mentioned over the phone that she was afraid. In those days, his attention felt like warmth. Later, it became surveillance. Security men waited outside restaurants. Drivers recorded when she arrived and left. Her medical appointments appeared on schedules inside Xander's office. Every gift came with another invisible lock. When Evelyn complained, he told her the precautions were necessary. "You are my wife." As if being his wife explained every intrusion. As if love could be measured by the number of armed men between her and the sidewalk. By their 3rd anniversary, Xander had stopped asking where she wanted to go. By their 4th, he had stopped telling her where he was going. By their 5th, the house knew more about him than she did. Lights turned on before he entered rooms. Doors unlocked at the touch of his hand. Men appeared when he called. Evelyn could sit across from him at dinner and feel less visible than the glass in his hand. Claire entered their lives during that 5th year. She introduced herself as a corporate risk consultant working with a shipping company connected to Crowe Holdings. She had dark hair, composed eyes, and the effortless confidence of a woman accustomed to powerful men. The first time Evelyn met her, Claire was standing in Xander's study holding a folder. Xander introduced them without discomfort. "Claire is helping with the port contracts." Claire smiled. "I have heard a great deal about you." Evelyn looked at Xander. "That makes one of us." The silence that followed was small but sharp. Xander's expression changed. Claire looked down at the folder. Evelyn walked away before either of them could offer a lie polite enough to make the moment disappear. The messages appeared a month later. Not love letters. Nothing dramatic. They were worse because of how ordinary they seemed. Claire asking whether Xander had eaten. Xander telling Claire he could not sleep. Claire sending a photograph of the city from a hotel window. Xander replying that he wished he were there. Evelyn found them by accident when his phone lit up beside her in bed. She did not open the conversation. She did not need to. The words visible on the screen were enough. She waited until morning. Xander was buttoning his shirt when she asked him, "Are you in love with her?" His hands paused at the cuffs. "No." "Have you touched her?" "No." "Have you wanted to?" Xander looked at her through the mirror. "That is not a fair question." Evelyn had almost laughed. Fairness became important quickly. He turned. Nothing happened. Something happened. "You just decided it does not count because you kept your clothes on." Xander's face closed. It was the expression he used in negotiations when he had decided emotion was an inconvenience. "I am not having this conversation before a meeting." Evelyn stood beside the bed in bare feet, looking at the man she had once crossed a ballroom to challenge. "When then, I will call you." He left. He did not call. 2 weeks later, Evelyn saw Claire leaving a hotel on East Walton Street. Xander used a private suite there for meetings he did not want connected to the estate. Claire stepped through the revolving door shortly after 7 in the morning. Her hair was tied back. She wore the same black dress Evelyn had seen her wearing at a Crowe Foundation dinner the night before. Xander exited 8 minutes later. He stopped when he saw Evelyn across the street. The traffic moved between them. Neither crossed. That afternoon, Evelyn packed 2 suitcases. Xander returned home to find her standing in the entrance hall while Thomas Keene carried the final bag to the car. "You are leaving." It was not a question. Evelyn put on her coat. "I already left months ago. I am only taking my things now." Xander dismissed Thomas with a look. When the front door closed, he approached her. "Claire and I are not what you think. You came out of a hotel after her. It is complicated." "No." "It is humiliating." His jaw tightened. "I never intended to hurt you." Evelyn looked at him for a long time. That sentence is what people say when they want their intentions judged instead of their actions. She walked past him. He caught her wrist. Not violently, not gently either. "Do not leave like this." She looked down at his hand. Xander released her immediately. "How should I leave? We talk first. I have been trying to talk to you for 2 years. That is not true." "It is true. You were simply in the room while I did it." For the first time, something uncertain entered his expression. Evelyn opened the door. "Do not send men after me. They are security. They report to you. They protect you. They watch me." His voice lowered. "You are safer with them." Evelyn stepped into the cold. "I have never felt less safe than I do inside this house." She moved into a furnished apartment overlooking the Chicago River. Xander continued paying for it despite her insistence that she could pay herself. She transferred the money back every month. He sent flowers twice. She donated them to the hospital lobby. He called at unpredictable hours, usually after midnight. The conversations lasted less than 5 minutes. Neither spoke about Claire. Neither used the word divorce. Xander believed time would soften Evelyn's anger. Evelyn used the time to meet with an attorney. The papers were complete the morning she took the pregnancy test. 2 lines appeared before she had finished setting the plastic stick on the bathroom counter. She sat on the tile floor for almost an hour. She did not call Xander. She called the clinic. Then she called her attorney and asked for 1 more day before filing, not because the child changed her decision, because Xander deserved to hear about his child from her before legal documents arrived. She still believed in that much dignity. Now, on the industrial road, dignity felt like a dangerous luxury. Her phone vibrated in the cup holder. The message appeared from an unknown number. "Turn around. Do not take the industrial road." Evelyn slowed. The navigation system showed the same route home it had displayed every time she left the estate. A second message arrived. "They know about the appointment." Her pulse changed. Only the clinic knew where she had been. Her attorney knew she had an appointment, but not the location. Thomas knew the clinic because he had driven her there twice the previous year. She called him. The line failed before it rang. She called Xander again. At the estate, his phone vibrated for the 14th time. Claire stood at the bottom of the staircase. "You should answer." Xander watched the screen. "She is angry. What if she is not?" He looked at Claire. The question irritated him because it entered a space he had worked hard not to examine. The phone stopped. Xander picked up his glass. Claire did not move. Rain struck the windows. After several seconds, she said goodnight and went upstairs. Xander remained in the study alone. He poured another drink. He told himself Evelyn would call in the morning. He told himself the argument could wait. He told himself many things that required her to remain exactly where he had left her. On the road, Evelyn's dashboard flickered. The engine died. She escaped the car. She ran through the fence. She reached the woods. She fought until 3 men carried her back through the rain. By the time they forced her into the van, the torn edge of the ultrasound photograph had been left among the broken glass. The rest remained hidden inside her coat. Xander learned none of this until shortly before dawn. Owen Hart entered the study without waiting for permission. His coat was wet. His face carried the hard stillness of a man bringing news that could not be softened. "We found Mrs. Crowe's car." Xander lowered the glass. "Where on the industrial corridor south of Lake Forest? Was she in it? No." The room seemed to narrow. Owen continued. "The passenger window was broken from outside. Her phone is gone. There are tracks leading through the fence and into the woods." Xander looked at his own phone on the side table. 14 missed calls. He picked it up. The call history opened beneath his thumb. Every time appeared on the screen. He had seen most of them arrive. He had ignored every one. Owen placed a clear evidence sleeve on the desk. Inside was a torn corner of a medical image. Xander recognized the clinic name first, then the printed date, then the word gestation. His eyes moved to the number, 8 weeks. He did not ask Owen what the image meant. He knew. Evelyn had not come to accuse him. She had not come to make a scene. She had crossed a storm carrying news of their child, and he had left her outside while Claire stood in his study wearing his shirt. Xander sat completely still. That stillness had frightened men for 15 years. Owen had seen it before executions, raids, and negotiations that ended with people disappearing. This stillness was different. It did not come from control. It came from the effort required not to break something with his bare hands. Who was at the gate? 2 men from the night rotation. Why was she denied entry? They followed your standing order. Xander looked up. What standing order? No unscheduled visitors while Miss Bennett was at the estate. My wife is not a visitor. Owen said nothing. Xander remembered issuing the order. He had been irritated by interruptions, by questions, by Evelyn's talent for making silence impossible when he wanted it. He had not used her name. He had not needed to. Everyone in the house understood that the order included her. Xander stood. "Get Reed. He is already reviewing traffic cameras. Seal the estate." Owen's expression shifted. From outside threats. From everyone. Xander picked up the evidence sleeve. The torn image trembled once between his fingers. He tightened his grip until it stopped. "I want the gate footage. I want her phone records. Every camera between the clinic, this house, and the location of the car. Nobody deletes anything. Nobody leaves." Owen moved toward the door. Xander spoke again. "And find Claire." Owen stopped. "She is in the guest wing." "No." Xander looked toward the staircase. The house was silent. "Find her." They searched the guest wing first, The bed had not been slept in. The borrowed clothes lay folded on a chair. The bathroom window was locked from inside. There were no bags, no passport, and no trace of the secondary phone Claire had always kept beyond his sight. Reed arrived 30 minutes later carrying a tablet and a thin folder. He was a quiet man with a forgettable face, which made him valuable in places where being remembered could become fatal. He placed the tablet on Xander's desk. We recovered traffic footage from 2 private cameras and 1 city feed. A dark van appeared on the screen. No license plate. It moved south along the industrial corridor 12 minutes after Evelyn's car stopped. Reed enlarged a frame. There is a partial company mark under the paint. Xander leaned closer. Harrow Transit. It was dissolved 11 months ago. Who owned it? A holding company in Delaware. That company belongs to another company registered in Nevada. Keep going. I already did. Reed opened the folder. The final page showed an old photograph taken outside a federal courthouse. A younger Claire stood beside 2 men. One was her father. The other was Silas Bell. Beneath the photograph, her legal name appeared in black print. Claire Isabel Bell. Xander stared at it. The Bell family had controlled part of Chicago's river freight network before Xander destroyed them. Their father had died in federal custody. Silas had disappeared. Claire had entered Xander's life under another name 4 months earlier. Every fact rearranged itself at once. The affair, the gate order, Evelyn's appointment, the van, the timing. Xander looked toward the empty doorway. Bring me every file we have on the Bell family. Reed closed the folder. There is something else. He opened Evelyn's call log. 14 calls to Xander. 1 attempted call to Thomas Keene. 2 messages from an unknown prepaid number. The first warned her not to use the industrial road. The second said they knew about the appointment. Xander read them twice. Someone tried to warn her, or someone wanted her afraid. Before Xander could answer, a voice came from the doorway. Both can be true. Claire stood there in dark slacks and a gray sweater taken from the guest closet. Her hair was damp from the rain, though no one had seen her return. Owen appeared behind her with one hand near his weapon. Claire looked at the photograph on the desk. Then she looked at Xander. The softness she had worn for months was gone. Xander's voice was quiet. Close the door, Claire. She entered. Owen shut the door behind her. Xander turned the photograph so it faced her. Tell me your name. Claire studied him. For the first time since he had known her, she did not pretend innocence. Claire Bell. The name settled into the room. Xander placed both hands on the desk. Where is my wife? Claire's gaze held his. I do not know the exact location. Wrong answer. It is the truth. My wife is missing. She is carrying my child. Your family's vehicle was on the road where she disappeared. Claire's face changed when he said child. Only slightly. Xander saw it. You did not know. No. Silas did. A silence passed. Claire looked toward the torn ultrasound image. When she spoke again, her voice had lost some of its certainty. My brother planned to take Evelyn. Xander moved around the desk. Owen shifted his stance. Claire did not step back. She was supposed to be leverage, she said. Nothing more. Xander stopped several feet from her. You entered my house. Yes. You entered my bed. Yes. You used my wife to reach me. Claire's jaw tightened. I used you. No. You used the distance between us. There is a difference. That truth struck harder because Xander could not deny it. Claire watched him understand. Silas has been studying this house for months, she said. Your schedules, your guards, Evelyn's routines. He knew she had moved out. He knew you would not let her in while I was here. Xander's voice dropped. How? Someone inside told him. The phone on the desk began to ring. Not Xander's public line, not the house line, his private number. Only 6 people possessed it. The display showed no caller identification. Xander looked at Claire. She had gone pale. He answered. For 2 seconds, there was only the low sound of machinery. Then a man spoke. "You finally picked up." Xander recognized the voice from an older recording. Silas Bell. "Let me hear, Evelyn." Silas exhaled softly. "No greeting. Let me hear my wife. She is alive. That was not my request." "No. It was the first thing you needed to know." Xander's hand tightened around the phone. Silas continued. "We found something in her coat. A medical photograph. 8 weeks according to the date." The room disappeared around Xander. Claire watched him. Owen watched Claire. Reed stood near the desk with the van frozen on the screen. Silas spoke with terrible calm. "Did you know your wife was pregnant?" Xander said nothing. A faint sound came through the phone. A door closing. Footsteps on concrete. Then Silas spoke again. "She crossed half the city in a storm to tell you. You left her outside because my sister was in your bed." Xander's eyes moved to Claire. She looked away. "Tell me what you want." Silas gave a quiet laugh. "Not yet. Then this conversation is finished." "No, it is only honest now." Xander walked toward the window. The rain had weakened. Dawn pressed gray light against the estate grounds. Silas's voice followed him. "My father spent 8 months waiting for a door to open. He called lawyers. He called doctors. He called people who owed him their lives. No one came." Xander looked toward the iron gate at the end of the drive. Silas said, "I want you to understand that kind of waiting." The call ended. Xander lowered the phone. No one in the office moved. Claire stood near the door, caught between the brother who had planned the kidnapping and the man whose wife she had helped betray. Xander looked at the torn ultrasound image, then at the photograph of Claire Bell, then at the list of people who had known Evelyn's schedule. One of those names belonged to a man who had worked inside the Crowe estate for 11 years. Xander reached for a pen and circled it. The name Xander circled belonged to Thomas Keene. For 11 years, Thomas had moved through the Crowe estate without creating suspicion. He knew which doors remained unlocked after midnight. He knew which guards drank too much coffee, which cameras failed in heavy rain, and which members of the household staff could be trusted with private information. More importantly, he knew Evelyn. He had driven her to medical appointments when Xander was too busy to go. He knew the name of her doctor, the location of the clinic, and the route she preferred when weather made the highway dangerous. He had been standing near the study when Xander issued the order that no one was to enter the estate without permission. Xander stared at the circled name until the ink began to bleed into the paper. Owen stood across the office. "You are certain Number Xander placed the pen down. That is why I want him brought in quietly." Claire watched from beside the door. "If Thomas is your source, Silas will know the moment you move against him." Xander looked at her. "You are still speaking as if this is his operation." "It is. You are standing inside my house." Claire did not flinch. "And your wife is standing inside his." The words landed harder than she intended. Owen turned toward her, but Xander raised one hand. He did not need anyone defending him from the truth. Reed Xander said, "Pull every message, call, and location record connected to Thomas. Do not alert his phone." Reed nodded and left. "Owen, bring him downstairs." "Restrained. Not yet." Owen left without another question. Claire remained where she was. Xander picked up the photograph of her standing beside Silas. "You knew Evelyn would come last night. I knew she had an appointment. That is not what I asked." Claire's eyes settled on the photograph. "I knew Silas expected her to come. Expected, he said, the pregnancy would make her reach for you one final time." Xander's expression did not move. "You knew she was pregnant?" "No. I knew she had gone to a clinic. Silas never told me why. Yet you stood in front of that window where she could see you." Claire looked up. "That was intentional." The room went still. Xander waited. Claire continued because stopping would only make the confession more cowardly. Silas wanted her hurt before she was taken. He wanted her leaving the estate distracted, emotional, less careful. "And you agreed. I followed the plan. You kissed me in front of the window." "Yes." Xander stepped closer. Claire held her ground, though her breath changed. "That was not surveillance." "No, that was cruelty." "Yes." Her answer left him with nothing to strike except the fact itself. He turned away from her. On the desk, Evelyn's 14 missed calls remained frozen on the screen. Claire spoke more quietly. "I told myself she was part of you." Xander looked over his shoulder. "What does that mean?" "It means I hated you before I knew her. Your house, your money, your name. Everything around you looked like something my family had lost. So you decided she deserved what happened because she wore my ring. At first." Xander's eyes hardened. Claire swallowed. "Then I saw her at the foundation dinner in October." He remembered the evening. Evelyn had attended alone because Xander had claimed an emergency meeting. Claire had been with him in a private dining room 3 blocks away. What did you see? She spent 2 hours smiling for people who kept asking where you were. She defended you without lying for you. She said you had been delayed. She never said you cared. Xander said nothing. Claire looked toward the rain-streaked window. "That was the first time I understood she was not protected by your world. She was trapped inside it." "And you continued?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because by then Silas had already built the operation around her. Because I believed he only wanted leverage. Because I was a coward." Xander walked back to the desk. "Do not ask me to respect your honesty now. I am not." A faint sound came from beneath the floor, a door closing in the lower level. Thomas had arrived. Xander moved toward the office entrance. Claire stepped aside. As he passed, she said, "Silas will not keep Evelyn at the first location forever." Xander stopped. "You know where she is. I know where she may be." He turned slowly. Claire met his gaze. "There is an old cold storage facility along the Calumet River. My father used it years ago. Silas restored the generator 6 months ago. Address. I do not know the exact number." Xander took another step toward her. "Claire, I know the district. I know the building type. I know there is river access and a freight road. Silas never gave me the full location because he knew that if anything failed, I might end up standing exactly where I am now." Xander studied her face. For months, he had believed he understood her silences. Now every expression had become evidence. "What makes you think Evelyn is there?" "Because Silas called it the primary site." The word carried weight. Primary means there is a secondary. "Yes, where I do not know." Xander looked at Owen's empty doorway. "Then start remembering." He left her in the office and went downstairs. Thomas sat in the basement interview room beneath the east wing. There were no windows. A single light hung above a metal table bolted to the concrete floor. Thomas had not been restrained. His hands rested in front of him, fingers loosely woven together. He looked up when Xander entered. For 1 second, something moved through his face. Fear. Then resignation. Owen stood beside the door. 2 security men waited in the corridor. Xander pulled out this chair across from Thomas and sat down. He placed the paper with the circled name between them. Thomas looked at it. Neither man spoke. The silence stretched until the hum of the ventilation system became impossible to ignore. Thomas finally cleared his throat. "Is Evelyn alive?" Xander's gaze did not leave him. "That is the first thing you ask." Thomas looked down. "I have been trying to find out. You knew she would be taken." "No." Xander leaned back. "Be careful. I knew they wanted information. I knew they were watching the estate. I did not know they were going to take her. You gave them the clinic." Thomas closed his eyes. Only for a second. Xander saw it. "You gave them her route." Thomas's jaw tightened. "You disabled the tracking system in her car. I did not damage the vehicle. That was not my accusation." Thomas looked at the wall. Xander spoke with the same calm tone he used when discussing contracts. It made the room colder. "How much did they pay you?" Thomas laughed once. There was no humor in it. Money would have been easier. "Then tell me what was worth my wife." Thomas's eyes returned to him. "My daughter." The answer changed the room. Owen remained still, but his gaze sharpened. Xander said nothing. Thomas continued. "Mia was walking home from soccer practice last month. She was 4 blocks from our house. A van stopped beside her. His voice became rough. They had her for 4 hours. Xander watched him. No ransom call? No. No demand. Not that night. Thomas rubbed his palms together. They returned her to the same street. She thought they were going to kill her. They tied her hands, put a hood over her head. They took photographs. "Who contacted you?" "A man using the name Cole. Surname Nunn." "How did you communicate encrypted platform?" "Messages erased after 30 seconds. Thomas looked toward Owen. "I saved the access key." Owen's expression changed slightly. Xander leaned forward. "Why? Because I knew one day I might need proof." "You had proof the first night they took your daughter." "What would you have done?" Xander did not answer. Thomas's voice rose. "You would have put men outside her school. You would have moved us into one of your houses. Silas would have known I told you. You knew it was Silas. I suspected." And the next time Thomas looked down, they said there would not be a next time. They said next time she would not come home. Xander's face remained unreadable. "So you gave them Evelyn?" Thomas flinched. "I gave them information. You gave them her clinic. I did not know she was pregnant. You gave them her schedule. I thought they wanted to watch her. You disabled her tracker. They said it was part of a test." Xander's voice dropped. A test of what Thomas could not answer. Xander reached into his jacket and placed the torn ultrasound image on the table. Thomas stared at it. His face changed. "What is that?" "You know what it is?" Thomas shook his head. "No. 8 weeks." The words seemed to remove the air from his lungs. Thomas looked at Xander. "She is pregnant?" "Yes." "I did not know. Would it have changed your decision?" Thomas opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Xander waited. That silence was the answer. Thomas covered his face with both hands. "I was trying to save Mia, and Evelyn was easier to sacrifice." Thomas looked up sharply. "That is not fair." "No." Xander's expression did not change. "It is accurate." Thomas pushed his chair back several inches. Metal scraped against concrete. "I sent the messages." Xander's gaze narrowed. "What messages?" "The warnings to Evelyn." Owen stepped away from the wall. Thomas continued quickly. "I found out late yesterday that they were moving. Cole sent a message asking whether Evelyn had left the clinic. I realized the operation was active. You contacted her. I could not call from my own number. They monitor everything. I used one of their relay accounts. You told her not to take the industrial road." "Yes. Why send her there in the first place I did not." Xander stared at him. Thomas shook his head. Her navigation system was compromised. They changed the route remotely. I told her to turn around because I knew where they were waiting. Why did the second message say they knew about the appointment? I needed her to understand it was real. You could have called me. Thomas gave him a hollow look. She called you 14 times. The statement struck with surgical precision. Owen's eyes shifted toward Xander. Thomas continued. I thought you would answer. Xander looked at the ultrasound image on the table. His voice remained steady. You thought wrong. Thomas lowered his eyes. I know. Give Owen the access key. Thomas reached slowly into his shirt pocket. One of the guards moved, but Owen raised a hand. Thomas removed a narrow strip of paper folded twice. He placed it on the table. Everything is there. Xander stood. Thomas looked up. What happens to Mia? She gets protection. Thomas's shoulders dropped with relief. Then Xander continued. You do not. Thomas's face tightened. Xander, you chose your child. Yes, I am choosing mine. He walked toward the door. Behind him, Thomas said, I am sorry. Xander stopped without turning. The room waited. He looked down at the torn photograph in his hand. Do not ask her to carry that for you. He left. Upstairs, Reed was waiting with 2 laptops open across the operations table. Claire stood on the opposite side of the room beneath the watch of 2 guards. Thomas's access key had already unlocked the messaging account. 43 exchanges appeared in a reconstructed archive. The first message had been sent 9 months earlier. It contained no threat, only a question. How much does Alexander Crowe trust you? Thomas had not answered for 3 days. The second message contained a photograph of Mia leaving school. After that, the replies became regular. Thomas provided staff schedules, vehicle assignments, clinic addresses, security rotations, Evelyn's apartment building, the restaurants she visited, the names of her attorney and physician. Every small detail looked harmless when viewed alone. Together they formed a cage. Reed scrolled to the final exchange. Sent at 4:47 the previous afternoon. Mrs. Crowe appointment confirmed. Likely arrival between 10:30 and 11:30. Gate order active. Vehicle tracking disabled. Route available. Primary confirmed. Xander read the final 2 words twice. Claire stepped closer. Primary confirmed is an activation command. You are certain? Yes. What happens after activation? The first site prepares for intake. Personnel move into position. The transfer routes become active. Reed enlarged the account metadata. The user Thomas reported to logged in from 3 different relay points. One of them was connected to a commercial unit in the South Deering district. Xander looked at the map. How old is the login 6 hours? Can we identify the building? Not yet. The connection jumped through a local network before the relay. Then identify the network. Reed nodded. Xander turned to Claire. You said the cold storage site was near the Calumet River. Yes. South Deering reaches the river. It does. Reed began pulling property records. Xander watched rows of addresses fill the screen. Warehouses, freight offices, machine shops, vacant lots, old factories that had outlived the companies that built them. The search would take time. Evelyn did not know anyone was searching yet. She woke on a concrete floor with a metallic taste in her mouth. For several seconds, she did not move. Her first clear thought was the baby. She placed both hands against her abdomen. No pain, no warmth between her legs, no blood that she could feel. She breathed slowly. The room was small enough that she could touch both walls in several steps. Concrete on 3 sides, a metal door on the 4th. A single work light hung behind a protective cage near the ceiling. There was a narrow cot, a plastic bucket, a bottle of water, a camera in the upper corner. Her wrists had been secured in front of her with plastic restraints. Her coat was still on, the torn lining pressed against her side. The ultrasound photograph was no longer there. Panic rose before she could stop it. Evelyn closed her eyes. She pictured the clinic room, the faint flicker on the screen. 8 weeks. She forced air into her lungs. In for 4 counts. Hold. Out for 6. Again. The camera watched. She would not give whoever sat behind it the satisfaction of seeing her break. The generator outside the room changed pitch. A low hum became a mechanical rattle, then settled again. Evelyn listened. Somewhere beyond the walls, water struck metal at irregular intervals. Not rain. Something heavier. A dock chain or loose panel moving in wind. Farther away, a train sounded. She began counting seconds. 11 minutes passed before the generator shifted again. Evelyn used the edge of the plastic restraint to scratch a short line into the wall beside the cot. Then she began counting from the start. The door opened during the 3rd cycle. A man entered carrying a paper bag. He was broad through the shoulders with a scar beside his left eye. The man from the woods. He placed the bag on the cot. Eat. Evelyn looked at him. You dropped me hard. You fought. You put your hands on a pregnant woman. His eyes moved toward her stomach. He already knew. That frightened her more than surprise would have. Evelyn said, "Where is the photograph?" He ignored the question. "There is water. I can see that. Drink it. Take these off." He looked at her wrists. "No, I cannot eat with my hands tied." "You can." He turned toward the door. Evelyn spoke before he reached it. "Your name is Wade." He stopped. One of the men in the woods had used the name. Evelyn had stored it the way she stored every detail now. Wade looked back. "You heard too much. You talked too loudly." He walked out and locked the door. Evelyn waited until his footsteps faded. Then she examined the bag. Bread, cheese, an apple, no utensils. She ate slowly. Every bite made her stomach turn, but she forced it down. The child needed something. During the next generator cycle, she noticed that the camera moved slightly when she crossed the room. Someone was actively controlling it. She turned her back to it and examined the cot. The frame was bolted together. One leg had rust around the joint. She gripped it with both hands and twisted. It did not move. She tried again during the next cycle. Still nothing. She stopped before her wrists began to bleed. The door opened an hour later. Silas Bell entered alone. He looked nothing like the monster Evelyn had built in her mind. He wore a dark coat over a charcoal sweater. His hair was neatly cut. His hands were empty. He carried another bottle of water. He set it on the cot and looked at the marks on the wall. "You are keeping time." Evelyn said nothing. Silas followed her gaze toward the camera. "You can ask me questions. Will you answer them?" "Some. Where am I?" "No. How long do you plan to keep me here?" "That depends on your husband. He is not very dependable." Silas smiled faintly. "I have noticed." Evelyn studied him. "You know about the baby?" "Yes." "Did Thomas tell you?" Something changed in Silas's eyes. It vanished quickly. Evelyn had her answer. Silas pulled the room's only chair away from the wall and sat. "You are observant. I had a quiet marriage. It gave me time to notice things. Alexander underestimated you. Most men who call themselves powerful underestimate women they believe they own." Silas leaned back. "You think he owns you?" "I think he tried." And now Evelyn looked at the locked door. "Now you are trying." Silas's smile disappeared. "You are not here because of anything you did. That is supposed to comfort me. It means you can leave alive. Men like you always say survival is possible when you want cooperation." Silas studied her for several seconds. "You do not sound frightened." "I am terrified." The honesty surprised him. Evelyn continued. "I am simply not interested in performing it for you." Silas looked toward the camera. My father used to say fear is useful only when it changes behavior. Your father sounds like a man who frightened people for a living. He understood the world. No, he understood his world. Silas's expression hardened. Evelyn knew she had touched something. She filed it away. Silas stood. Alexander is going to make a choice. He has been making choices for years. This one will cost him. Evelyn looked directly at him. Then you do not know my husband as well as you think. Silas paused. Why? Because the cost has always been paid by someone else. For the first time, Silas had no immediate answer. He left the room. The lock engaged. Evelyn exhaled slowly. Her hands were shaking. She sat on the cot and pressed them between her knees until they stopped. At the estate, Reed located the commercial network. It belonged to Harrow Logistics, a company registered to a postal address in Delaware and operating from a converted factory unit on the south side. The lease had begun 8 months earlier. No employees were listed. Utility records showed unusual power usage during nights and weekends. Xander looked at the address. Surveillance base. Claire nodded. Most likely. Not the holding site. No. Silas would never connect them directly. Reed brought up traffic footage near the unit. A dark van appeared twice during the previous week. The same partial paint mark as the vehicle seen near Evelyn's car. Xander looked toward Owen. How many men can move without drawing attention? 8. Use 6. Owen shook his head. If the building is active, 6 may not be enough. If the building is active, I do not want them seeing an army arrive. Claire stepped forward. If Silas learns you found Harrow, he may move Evelyn. Xander looked at her. Then he cannot learn. His private phone rang again. The same unknown display. Everyone in the room went silent. Xander answered. Silas spoke over the low hum of machinery. I hear you have begun searching. Let me speak to Evelyn. You are repetitive. So are kidnappers. Silas gave a small laugh. Then there was movement on the line. A door unlocking. Concrete echo. Evelyn's voice came through, distant, but clear. Xander. He closed his eyes for less than a second. I am here. A pause. She asked, Did you finally answer? The words cut through him. Silas had given her the phone to create pain. He did not need to. Evelyn's voice did it without effort. Are you hurt? My cheek. My wrists. Nothing else. The baby I do not know. Xander gripped the edge of the table. I am coming for you. Evelyn was quiet. Then she said, Do not say things, because you need to hear yourself say them. Silas took the phone back. That is enough. Xander's voice changed. If you touch her again, there will be no place in this city deep enough to hide you. You still believe threats are power. Tell me what you want. A man named Victor Sloan. Claire looked up sharply. Xander watched her reaction. Silas continued. He is in federal custody. Your organization took records from him 2 years ago. Account structures, ownership maps, access codes, information that belongs to my family. It belonged to a criminal operation. You say that as if yours is different. Xander did not answer. You have contacts inside federal custody, Silas said. You will arrange access to Sloan and recover the records. That cannot be done in a day. You have 24 hours, and then you return what was stolen. I return your wife, unharmed. A pause. If you follow instructions. Xander's gaze remained on Claire. Silas's voice lowered. If I see your people moving toward any site connected to me, Evelyn will be transferred. To where? Somewhere your sister cannot help you find. Claire's face went pale. Silas continued. After that, we will stop negotiating for your wife. The machinery on the line seemed louder. We will negotiate for whether your child gets the chance to be born. The call ended. No one spoke. Xander lowered the phone slowly. Owen looked toward the map. Reed looked toward the Harrow address. Claire remained perfectly still. Xander crossed the room until he stood in front of her. "You knew. I knew there was another location. You knew he would threaten the child." "No. Do not lie to me again. I am not." Claire's voice cracked for the first time. "He told me Evelyn was leverage. He never said the pregnancy would become a separate condition." Xander searched her face. Claire stepped closer. "My family lost everything because of you. I will not pretend that does not matter. My father died alone. My brother spent 2 years living for this." She looked toward the phone in Xander's hand. "But an unborn child is not part of that debt." Xander's expression remained cold. "Silas disagrees." "Then Silas is wrong. Is that enough to make you help me?" Claire looked at the photograph of her family on the desk, then at the torn ultrasound image beside it. When she answered, her voice was quiet. "Yes." Reed broke the silence. "I have movement at Harrow Logistics." He turned the monitor toward them. A traffic camera showed 2 men loading boxes into a white panel van. Another carried rolled maps from the unit. They were clearing the site. Xander looked at Owen. "Move." The Harrow unit stood inside a converted industrial block near the river. Its steel shutter was closed. The surrounding businesses had gone dark hours earlier. Xander arrived with Owen, Reed, and 4 men in plain clothes. Claire came despite his order to remain at the estate. She entered the second vehicle before anyone could stop her. Xander saw her when they parked. He did not waste time arguing. Owen forced the side lock in less than a minute. The unit was empty, too clean. Rectangular marks on the concrete showed where desks had stood. Cut wires hung from the walls. The air smelled of hot electronics and old coffee. Reed moved through the space with a flashlight. They left fast. Xander examined a waste bin. Empty. Owen checked a small office at the rear. Nothing. Claire walked toward the far wall. A large paper map had been torn down, but one corner remained beneath a strip of tape. She peeled it free. The fragment showed part of the Calumet River. A building had been circled in red ink. Beside it were 3 words. Primary ready. Capacity 2. Claire looked at Xander. "That is the cold storage site." Reed took the fragment and compared it with the property map on his tablet. "There are 4 decommissioned cold facilities in this section." Claire pointed toward a faded dock number beside the circle. "Not 4. Reed entered the number. 1 property remained. A 6-story concrete warehouse on the river owned by a shipping company dissolved 18 months earlier. Utility records showed active generator fuel deliveries. Xander stared at the building image. Gray walls, few windows, loading access at the water, a freight road on the north side. The place had been designed to keep cold inside and the world outside. Owen studied the entrances. "We can have a tactical layout within 2 hours." Claire looked at Xander. "If you move openly, Silas transfers her. He already knows I am searching. He does not know you found this." Xander folded the map fragment and put it inside his jacket. Reed checked the surrounding traffic feeds. "There are 2 likely exit routes, river or freight corridor." Owen said, "We can watch both, without being seen. Not with a full team." Xander walked toward the open unit door. Outside, the city continued beneath a pale afternoon sky. Trucks moved through intersections. A train groaned along elevated tracks. People crossed streets carrying coffee and groceries, unaware that Evelyn Crowe was locked inside a concrete room less than 6 miles away. Claire followed him into the alley. "There is something else." Xander stopped. She crossed her arms, then lowered them. The gesture looked less like confidence now, and more like someone trying to contain herself. Silas called me before he called you. What did he say? That if you begin active pursuit, he moves her to the secondary location. You already told me. He said the secondary site is not built for a long hold. Xander's attention sharpened. How long? 4 hours, maybe 6. Then Claire looked toward the river beyond the buildings. He either returns her to a fixed location or makes a final decision. About Evelyn. About the pregnancy. Xander turned away from her. For years, decisions had become simple when pressure increased. Identify the threat. Remove the threat. Accept the cost. Now every available move placed Evelyn in greater danger. Wait, and she remained in Silas's hands. Comply, and the Bell organization could rise again. Attack, and she would be moved beyond his reach. There was no clean choice, only different forms of failure. Xander took out his phone and called Owen. Get the building plans. Every renovation, every utility line, every access point. Owen listened. Xander looked at the cold storage warehouse on Reed's tablet. Placed 2 men near the freight corridor and 2 near the river before dark. No uniforms, no Crowe vehicles. Claire watched him. You are going in. Xander ended the call. I am bringing my wife home. If Silas sees you coming, he moves her. Then he cannot see us. And if there is an exit, we missed. Xander looked toward the black water at the end of the alley. Then I live with knowing I moved too late again. He put the phone in his pocket. That is not happening twice. The first tactical photograph of the cold storage facility arrived 19 minutes after Xander left the alley. It showed a block of concrete pressed against the Calumet River, 6 stories high, windowless across most of its western face. Rust stained the walls beneath old drainage pipes. A faded company name remained above the loading dock, though half the letters had fallen away. The building looked abandoned. That meant nothing. Places like that rarely looked dangerous until someone tried to leave them. Xander returned to the estate with Claire in the passenger seat and Reed following in the second vehicle. Neither of them spoke during the drive. Chicago moved around them beneath a low gray sky. Buses stopped. Pedestrians crossed wet streets. A delivery driver argued with a man outside a restaurant. The ordinary rhythm of the city continued with an almost insulting calm. Xander kept both hands on the wheel. His mind remained inside the warehouse. 4 entrances, 2 likely transfer routes, at least 1 secondary location. A wife locked behind concrete, a child whose heartbeat he had never heard. Claire looked at him once. You are driving too fast. Xander did not slow. You are no use to her dead. He looked at the road. You have already used that word once today. What word? Her. Claire turned toward the window. Rainwater moved across the glass in long, uneven lines. I know her name. No. You knew her schedule. Claire's jaw tightened. Xander continued. You knew when she left the clinic. You knew which road she would take. You knew where she would stand when she saw us through the window. I told you I followed the plan. And I told you that honesty after the damage does not change the damage. Claire did not answer. The estate gates opened before the vehicle reached them. Xander noticed the movement. Automatic. Immediate. No one questioned his arrival. No one told him to wait. Evelyn had stood outside those same gates with rain in her eyes and his child in her body, and 2 men had treated her like a stranger because Xander had made obedience more important than judgment. He drove through. The gates closed behind him. For the first time, the sound did not feel like security. It sounded like a cell locking. Inside the operations room, Owen had already covered the central table with building plans. Old Port Authority records lay beside current satellite images. Photographs showed the north freight entrance, the river dock, the main personnel door, and a narrow space between the warehouse and the adjoining brick structure. Reed placed his tablet beside the plans. The building was constructed in 1968 as a refrigerated storage facility. It operated until 12 years ago. The company dissolved after an environmental lawsuit. Owen pointed to the center of the floor plan. Original freezer rooms here, reinforced walls, limited access. If Silas converted any part of the building for holding someone, this is the strongest location. Xander studied the measurements. How far from the nearest exterior wall? Almost 100 feet. How long from breach to center? That depends on resistance. Without resistance. 40 seconds from the east service access. A minute from the street doors. Longer from the dock. Xander looked at the eastern wall. The original plan showed a service passage between the cold rooms and the adjoining property. The current satellite image showed only concrete. What happened to this entrance? Reed enlarged a photograph. A renovation report says it was sealed 10 years ago. No inspection record confirms the work, so it may still be there. Yes. Owen crossed his arms. If it is not, the team will be exposed in the narrow space with no alternate entry. Xander looked at the gap between buildings. 40 feet of open ground. No street visibility from the north. Partial cover from the neighboring wall. It was the quietest approach and the easiest place to become trapped. Claire stood at the far end of the table. Silas would expect the dock. Everyone looked at her. She moved closer. He grew up around river operations. He trusts water routes more than streets. If he built this place for extraction, the dock will be his first choice. Owen said, "Then the dock will be the most heavily guarded." Yes, which makes it useful. Claire understood before Reed did. As a diversion. Owen nodded. Create enough noise at the water to pull eyes away from the eastern wall. Xander kept studying the plans. What about cameras? Reed changed screens. 2 visible on the riverside, 1 above the north freight entrance, 1 near the main door. There may be others inside. Power source, local generator. The building still draws small amounts from the grid, but not enough to support full operations. Can we shut it down? Yes, but darkness helps them as much as us. Claire shook her head. Silas has emergency lights, red lamps in the central corridors. He uses them at older sites. Owen glanced at her. How do you know our father did the same? The words created a brief silence. Claire looked down at the plans. The warehouse was not just a target to her. It belonged to the ruins of a life Xander had helped destroy. Xander saw the memory pass across her face and felt no sympathy. Not yet. Owen tapped the north side of the map. Freight corridor runs 2 blocks before joining the industrial road. We can place a vehicle here and another here. Nothing obvious. No roadblock until the breach begins. Reed pointed toward the river. The channel behind the warehouse is narrow. A boat can move south toward the lake or north toward the turning basin. How many boats does Silas have? Claire answered. At least 2. 1 industrial launch, 1 smaller vessel used for transfers. Speed. The smaller one is faster. Xander looked at Reed. Can we place men on the water without being noticed? Before dark, yes. After dark, anyone sitting in the channel will stand out. Owen checked his watch. Sunset in 2 hours and 6 minutes. Xander straightened. Then positions are set before dark. Owen studied him. We still do not know how many men are inside. Claire estimated 12 to 15. That estimate is 4 months old. I know. We have 8 available without pulling men from visible posts. Pull 2 more. That leaves the estate exposed. Xander looked toward the hallway. The estate failed to protect the only person who mattered. Owen's expression remained neutral, but the words reached him. Xander continued. Take them in. Owen nodded once. 10 total, 2 at the freight corridor, 2 on the river, 2 at the dock diversion, 4 through the primary entry. That leaves no reserve. Reed remains mobile. Reed is not a reserve team. He is if the building changes. Owen placed both hands on the table. You are building this around speed. Yes. Speed depends on the service entrance being open. Then confirm it. We cannot get close enough without testing their surveillance. Xander looked at the photograph of the eastern wall. A rusted door remained visible beneath layers of paint and corrosion. He could not tell whether it was functional. He could not tell whether it was welded from inside. He could not tell whether Silas had placed someone behind it with a weapon. There was no answer in the image. Only risk. Prepare the second breach, Xander said. If the service entrance is sealed, we strike both street doors at once. Owen looked at him. That will be loud. Then the dock diversion becomes louder. Claire's eyes moved across the map. If the alarm starts, they will move Evelyn. We seal both exits. You know the 2 exits Silas normally uses. Then give me the others. I do not know the others. Xander turned toward her. Claire held his gaze. I told you the truth. My brother gives people enough information to perform one task. He does not give anyone the entire structure. Yet you knew the primary site. I knew it existed. I did not know it was active until I saw the map. Xander looked back at the table. The room contained more information than they had possessed that morning. It still did not contain enough. Owen said, There is another option. Xander waited. We continue the Victor Sloan exchange. Make Silas believe we are complying. Buy time. Confirm Evelyn's location through external surveillance. Claire shook her head. Silas will expect surveillance. Expecting it and finding it are different things. He may move her simply because Xander takes too long. Owen looked at Xander. You have 24 hours. No. Silas gave you 24 hours. He gave me 24 hours because he wants me dismantling my own protection while Evelyn waits in a concrete room. That does not mean we charge into a trap. Xander stepped away from the table. No one spoke as he walked toward the windows. The estate grounds stretched toward the gate in wet gray layers. Security men moved along the perimeter. Vehicles waited beneath the covered drive. Everything appeared disciplined. Everything appeared controlled. Evelyn had once told him the estate felt less like a home than a country occupied by one man. He had dismissed the comment. He had told her she was being dramatic. Now he saw armed men standing beneath the trees and wondered how long she had been frightened by a life he had called protection. Owen came to stand several feet behind him. You need to think as her husband and as the man leading this operation. Xander looked at the glass. I have spent years choosing the second. That is not what I said. It is what I heard. You cannot rescue her by turning guilt into strategy. Xander turned. Owen had worked for him for 15 years. In that time, Owen had questioned logistics, timing, personnel, and risk. He rarely questioned motive. Xander said, You think that is what this is? I think you saw the ultrasound and decided the only acceptable action is the fastest one. My wife was taken because I ignored her. She was taken because Silas Bell planned an abduction. She was alone because I ignored her. Owen did not disagree. Xander continued. I left her outside. I watched her name light up my phone 14 times. I knew she was hurt and chose comfort over the conversation. And now every hour she remains there belongs to the same decision. Owen's voice softened. Saving her does not erase the affair. I know. It does not repair the marriage. I know. She may leave you after this. Xander looked toward the gates. She was already leaving. The admission entered the room quietly. Claire lowered her eyes. Owen studied Xander. How do you know I do not? But he did. Evelyn had not come to the estate with hope. Not entirely. There had been something final in the way she stood at the gate on the security recording. Her shoulders had not been raised in anger. She had not demanded that the guards call him repeatedly. She had told them to say she came. Then she had left. The ultrasound had been news. The storm had been urgency. The silence after 14 calls had been an answer. Xander turned from the window. "We continue the exchange." Owen's expression sharpened. Xander walked back to the table. "Reed creates evidence that I am reaching Victor Sloan." Reed opened a new screen. "I can generate contact with the Federal Transfer Network, but any real request creates a record. Create it. That exposes the intermediary." "Yes. It may expose your access to federal custody." "Yes." Owen watched him. "You are willing to burn that relationship." Xander looked at the warehouse image. "It exists because I made a deal with men who believed my information was worth protecting me. If it buys Evelyn time, they can decide tomorrow that I am no longer useful. Reed said Silas will want proof. Give him a transfer request number. That means filing an authentic request. Do it." Reed began typing. Claire remained beside the table. "What happens to Victor? Nothing. You cannot recover the Bell records without him. I do not intend to recover them." "Then Silas will know." "Not before we enter the building." Claire studied him. "You are building a false exchange to hold his attention." "Yes. He may call someone inside the federal system. Then Reed creates enough movement for that person to find." Reed glanced up. "That is possible. How long? 40 minutes. Do it in 30. Reed did not respond. He simply worked faster. Xander left the operations room and went upstairs alone. His office looked exactly as he had left it. The legal pad lay open on the desk. Evelyn's name remained at the top of the page. Below it were times, addresses, names, phone numbers, and questions. The handwriting became more compressed as the information grew. Xander stood over it. He remembered another piece of paper, a guest list Evelyn had placed beside his breakfast 3 years earlier, a library fundraiser. She had circled the date and written one sentence beneath it. "Please come, because it matters to me." Xander had missed the event. He had sent a donation large enough to cover the entire renovation. Evelyn thanked him in front of the board. At home, she said nothing. He had mistaken silence for satisfaction. The second drawer of the desk held a gun. The third held financial records. The locked cabinet behind him contained files that could send dozens of men to prison, including him. He had built a life where every object served power. Nothing in the room had ever served Evelyn. Xander sat down. He opened a lower drawer and removed a folder. Inside were photographs from the first year of their marriage. Evelyn laughing on the roof of a hotel while snow moved over the city. Evelyn asleep on a sofa with a book against her chest. Evelyn standing in the unfinished library wing wearing a hard hat too large for her head. He had not looked at the photographs in years. His phone vibrated. A message from Reed. "Federal request active. Confirmation ready." Xander closed the folder. He tore the page with Evelyn's name from the legal pad, folded it once, and placed it inside his jacket. The action made no tactical sense. He did it anyway. When he returned downstairs, Claire was alone in the corridor outside the operations room. The guard stood far enough away to give the appearance of privacy while hearing every word. Claire leaned against the wall. "I need to tell you the rest." Xander stopped. "The rest of what? The affair?" His face closed. "There is nothing about it I need from you. You need to know how it began. I know how it ended." Claire straightened. The first meeting was staged. Xander said nothing. The shipping contract, the risk assessment, the dinner where I sat beside you. Silas arranged all of it. I assumed that. The first kiss was part of the plan. Xander's jaw moved once. Claire continued. "I was supposed to create distance between you and Evelyn. Silas believed you would become careless if your attention was divided. He was right." "Yes." The answer was almost a whisper. Claire looked toward the floor. "I told myself every moment with you was false. That made it easier." Xander watched her. Was it? She raised her eyes. Not every moment. He gave a cold laugh. You think that matters? No. I think it makes what I did worse. Xander stepped closer. Claire did not move. You entered my life to destroy my marriage. Yes. You continued after Evelyn left. Yes. You watched me ignore her calls. Yes. And now you want me to understand that part of you cared. Claire's eyes hardened with something close to shame. I want you to understand why I did not stop soon enough. That explanation belongs to you. I know. Then carry it. He moved past her. Claire spoke behind him. I saw Evelyn before the foundation dinner. Xander stopped. Claire continued. She was standing near the entrance. She had come alone. Everyone kept asking where you were. Xander turned slightly. She smiled every time. I know. No. You did not see it. Claire's voice tightened. She was not smiling because she believed you were coming. She was smiling because she knew you were not. Xander looked at her. Claire said I realized she had been protecting your reputation while you were humiliating her. The corridor was silent. Xander answered, And you still came to my room? Yes. Claire's eyes shone, but she did not look away. That is the part I cannot make smaller. Xander left her there. In the warehouse, Evelyn heard footsteps outside the door. 2 men. One dragged his right foot slightly. Wade. The other walked faster and breathed through his mouth. A younger guard. The lock opened. Wade entered with the second man behind him. You are moving. Evelyn sat on the cot with one hand pressed against her stomach. Wade's face changed. What is wrong, I do not know. The younger guard looked at him. She was fine an hour ago. Evelyn bent forward. The movement was partly performance. The fear beneath it was real. She had felt a tight pull low in her abdomen when she stood too quickly. It had passed. She turned it into something useful. I need a doctor. Wade remained near the door. No. Evelyn looked up. Your employer wants the baby alive. The younger guard glanced toward the camera. Wade said, You are not bleeding. You cannot see everything from the doorway. His expression hardened. Evelyn breathed through her mouth. She let her shoulders shake. Not too much. Too much would look false. The younger guard said, We should move her to the supply room. Wade looked at him. She stays here. If something happens, Belle blames us. The name confirmed what Evelyn already suspected. Silas Bell. Wade considered the camera. Then he stepped forward and cut the restraint around Evelyn's wrists. Stand. She moved slowly. The younger guard took her left arm. Wade took the right. Evelyn allowed most of her weight to fall between them. The hallway outside the room was narrow and lit by yellow work lamps. She counted her steps. 6, 12, 19. At 27, they turned left. Cold air moved across her face from somewhere ahead. A metal staircase rose along the wall. She heard water behind the concrete. The riverside. A gray door stood beneath a red emergency lamp. Wade entered 4 numbers into a keypad. His hand moved quickly. Top left, lower center, lower right, top right. Evelyn stored the pattern. The supply room contained a folding table, bandages, bottled water, and several boxes of medical equipment. No doctor. Wade pointed to a chair. Sit. Evelyn lowered herself carefully. The younger guard began searching a cabinet. His jacket sleeve brushed the edge of the table. A paper inventory tag had stuck to the fabric. The printed line showed a building code and a partial dock number. Evelyn knocked the water bottle from the table. It struck the floor and rolled beneath a shelf. The younger guard cursed and bent to retrieve it. Evelyn's fingers closed around the tag. She folded it into her palm. Wade watched her face. "You are not in pain." Evelyn looked at him. "I am pregnant, exhausted, and locked in a warehouse by men who dragged me through a forest." Wade took one step closer. "You are playing a dangerous game." "No. I am surviving yours." His hand closed around her jaw. The pressure was controlled but painful. Evelyn did not look away. Wade said, "Do not mistake his orders for weakness." "I do not." She spoke carefully through his grip. "I mistake you for a man afraid of failing them." His fingers tightened. The younger guard stood. "Wade." The camera in the corner moved. Wade released her. He cut a new restraint and secured her wrists again. "Take her back." During the walk, Evelyn let the folded tag fall beside a crack in the wall near the metal staircase. She pressed it into the opening with the side of her shoe. At the turn toward her room, she tore a strip from the already damaged lining of her coat. She tied it beneath a low pipe while pretending to stumble. Neither guard noticed. Back inside the room, she waited until the door locked. Then she sat on the cot and gripped the rusted leg. She twisted. Metal shifted. Only slightly. Enough. At the estate, Reed displayed the federal transfer request on the largest screen. Victor Sloan's name appeared beside an internal review code. A confirmation number had been generated. The request would survive basic verification. It would not survive close examination. Xander photographed the screen and sent the image to the contact relay Silas had used. The response arrived 90 seconds later. "Good. Continue." Xander read the message. No mention of Evelyn. No proof of life. No new demand. Only control. Owen entered wearing dark clothing instead of his usual suit. "Teams are moving." Xander checked the time. River position. "Set in 30 minutes. Freight corridor. Same. Diversion vehicle and boat ready. Primary team equipment room." Owen looked at him. "You should remain with Reed." "No." "Xander, I am entering through the service passage. You are the only person Silas needs alive long enough to complete the exchange. He needs me distracted. He may have men instructed to kill you if you breach. Then they will try." Owen's patience thinned. "This is not penance." Xander met his gaze. "I did not say it was. You are acting like taking the first bullet changes the years before it. It changes who reaches Evelyn first." Owen held his eyes. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then Owen said, 4 on primary entry. You stay third in line. Second. Third. Xander's expression hardened. Owen did not move. If I am leading the team, you stay third. Xander considered him. Second after you. Owen exhaled through his nose. Fine. Claire entered the operations room carrying a smaller map. She placed it beside the main plan. I remembered something. Xander looked down. She pointed to the river dock. There is an old maintenance channel beneath the western platform. My father used it to move small cargo without using the main dock. Reed enlarged the satellite image. The channel was not visible. Where does it exit South Wall? Near the waterline. Owen's expression changed. A third river exit. Yes. Can a boat use it? A small one. Xander looked at Reed. Move the river team south. That weakens coverage north. Add Reed's vehicle near the turning basin. Reed nodded. Claire continued. Silas does not improvise when he is afraid. He returns to infrastructure he already trusts. Xander looked at her. You think he is afraid. He has wanted this for 2 years. Wanting something that long makes the moment of having it unstable. Owen folded the updated map. We move in 20 minutes. The next 20 minutes passed with the quiet speed of men who understood that unnecessary words were another form of delay. Weapons were checked, radios tested, vehicle plates replaced, medical kits loaded. Reed confirmed each team with single-word responses. Xander changed into dark clothing. No armor visible from a distance, no insignia. Nothing that announced authority, only a weapon beneath his jacket and the folded page with Evelyn's name against his chest. Before leaving, he crossed the entrance hall. The main doors stood open while men moved equipment outside. Beyond them, the iron gates waited at the end of the drive. Xander stopped. One of the guards from the previous night stood near the security desk, the same man who had spoken to Evelyn. His face changed when Xander looked at him. Xander walked over. "What did she say?" The guard swallowed. "Sir, my wife. At the gate." The man looked toward Owen. Owen gave no assistance. The guard answered. "She said she needed to see you." "What else?" "She said she was not a visitor." Xander's face remained still. "And you?" "I told her the order included family." The words sounded worse, spoken aloud. "Did she ask you to call me, yes? Did you?" "No, sir." "Why?" "Because your order was specific." Xander looked at him for several seconds. The guard's breathing became shallow. Xander said, "She told you to say she came." "Yes." "Did you?" The guard looked down. "No." Xander stepped closer. The man braced himself. Xander did not strike him. He did not raise his voice. "You obeyed exactly what I asked." The guard looked up, uncertain. Xander continued, "That does not make you innocent. It makes both of us responsible." He turned and walked outside. The vehicles left the estate in separate intervals. Xander rode with Owen. Neither spoke until they reached the industrial district. Darkness settled over the river in layers. Streetlights stood far apart. Chain-link fences divided empty lots. The air smelled of diesel-wet concrete and cold water. Reed's voice came through the radio. "River team set." A pause. "Freight team set." Another pause. "Diversion approaching." Owen parked 2 blocks from the warehouse. Xander stepped out. The cold struck immediately. They moved on foot through the shadow of the adjoining structure. 3 men followed. No one spoke above a whisper. At the edge of the neighboring wall, the warehouse came into view. 40 feet of open ground separated them from the eastern service door. The door looked smaller than it had in the photographs. Rust covered the frame. No light showed beneath it. Owen raised one hand. The team stopped. Reed's voice sounded in Xander's earpiece. 2 cameras turned toward the dock. Freight entrance still active. 1 guard visible north side. Claire spoke from Reed's vehicle. "Silas will place another watcher above the river." Reed answered. "Confirmed. Upper platform." Owen looked at Xander. The diversion team waited. Xander pictured Evelyn inside the concrete building. He did not picture her helpless. He pictured her watching, counting, remembering. That was who she had always been. He had simply failed to notice. Owen placed a tool against the service door. "Once the dock team moves, we have 20 seconds. Xander checked his weapon. His heart was beating too hard. He brought it down with one slow breath. Then another. Inside the warehouse, Evelyn heard an engine near the water. The guards outside her room became silent. A radio crackled. Footsteps moved quickly through the corridor. Evelyn stood. She twisted the cot leg again. The rusted joint gave way with a soft metallic snap. She held the length of steel behind her back. The lock turned. At the eastern wall, Owen looked at Xander. Xander gave the signal. The diversion erupted at the dock. Engines roared. A light swept across the river entrance. Men shouted near the water. The warehouse cameras turned. Owen forced the service lock. Inside Evelyn's room, Wade opened the door and ordered her to stand. She was already standing. He saw the cot leg 1 second too late. Evelyn swung it into his knee as Xander stepped through the eastern door. Evelyn swung the metal cot leg with both hands. It struck Wade just above the knee. His leg folded beneath him. He fell against the door frame with a sound that was more shock than pain, and Evelyn moved before he could recover. She drove the end of the metal into his wrist. The gun slipped from his hand. The younger guard reached for her. Evelyn turned and struck him across the mouth. Blood flashed against the yellow light. He caught the metal bar on the second swing and pulled her toward him. For 1 second they stood locked together, her hands around the steel, his fingers crushing hers. Then a burst of noise rolled through the building. An engine roared near the dock. Men shouted. A radio began screaming from Wade's belt. The younger guard looked toward the corridor. That glance cost him. Evelyn drove her knee into his stomach. He released the bar. She struck him once across the side of the head. He dropped against the wall and slid to the floor. Wade was already reaching for the gun. Evelyn stepped on his wrist. He looked up at her. The woman he had dragged from the woods was gone. In her place stood someone pale, exhausted, and absolutely unwilling to be moved again. She kicked the weapon out of reach, took the key ring from his belt, and ran. At the eastern entrance, Xander followed Owen into darkness. The service passage had not been sealed. It had been hidden beneath a newer section of metal siding and locked with a commercial deadbolt that Owen opened in less than 10 seconds. They entered single file. The air inside smelled of cold concrete machine oil and old water. A generator hummed somewhere ahead. Red emergency lights blinked along the far corridor. Owen raised one hand. The team stopped. A guard sat on a wooden crate near the wall, his back turned toward them. He was watching the noise at the dock through a security monitor. Owen crossed the distance quietly, one arm around the throat, one hand over the mouth. The guard struggled for several seconds before going still. Owen lowered him to the floor. The team moved again. Xander heard gunfire near the river. 2 shots, then 3. The diversion had stopped being a performance. A voice came through his earpiece. Dock team engaged. Reed's tone remained controlled. 3 guards moving west, 1 remaining near the northern corridor. Xander looked toward the center of the building. The floor plan had shown a direct path through the old refrigeration area. The path in front of him was blocked by a steel gate that had not appeared on any record. Owen examined the lock. 30 seconds. We do not have 30. Xander looked through the bars. A narrow corridor continued beyond the gate. A strip of torn black fabric had been tied beneath a pipe. Evelyn's coat. He recognized the material. She came through here. Owen saw it. Xander reached through the gate and touched the fabric with 2 fingers. It was still damp. Reed spoke through the radio. Movement inside the central corridor. Multiple heat signatures. Xander stepped back. Open it. Owen placed a compact charge against the lock. The team moved behind the concrete corner. The explosion was small but sharp. The gate jumped in its frame. Owen pulled it open. They crossed immediately. Evelyn reached the first turn in the corridor and stopped. 2 directions. To the left, voices and radio traffic. To the right, cold air and the distant sound of water. She remembered the supply room. 27 steps. 1 left turn, the metal staircase, the western wall. She moved right. Her bare hand tightened around Wade's gun. She had never fired one. Xander had tried to teach her once during the first year of their marriage. He had taken her to a private range outside the city. The gun had felt too heavy. The sound had made her flinch. Xander had stood behind her, one hand over hers, the other against her waist. "Do not fight the recoil," he had said. "Let it pass through you." She had laughed. "That sounds like terrible marriage advice." He had smiled against her hair. She remembered that smile now and hated the memory for being warm. A man appeared at the far end of the corridor. He saw her. His hand moved toward his jacket. Evelyn raised the gun. "Stop." He kept moving. She fired. The shot struck the wall beside him. Concrete dust burst into the air. He ducked back around the corner. Evelyn's ears rang. Her hands shook violently. She forced them still. "Do not fight the recoil. Let it pass through you." She moved toward the metal staircase. At the central gate, Xander heard the gunshot. Not from the dock. Not from the northern entrance. Inside. He looked at Owen. That was near her room. They ran. Silence was no longer useful. The building knew they were inside. A guard appeared from a side passage. Owen fired first. The man dropped. Another shot came from the upper level. One of Xander's men spun and struck the floor. Owen pulled him behind a concrete column while Xander returned fire. The shooter vanished above the railing. "Can he move?" Xander asked. The wounded man pressed one hand against his side. "I can hold here." Owen looked at the blood moving between his fingers. "You hold nothing. Pressure on the wound." Reed's voice came through. "Freight team reports vehicle movement. One van starting north." "Block it," Xander said. "Confirmed." A second voice answered through the radio. Van stopped. 2 men inside. Xander moved toward the next corridor. Owen caught his shoulder. "Wait." Xander looked at him. Owen pointed. A camera above the door turned toward them. Then the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the hallway. Red emergency lamps came alive one after another. The warehouse changed shape under them. Walls became shadows. Open doors looked like empty mouths. The generator slowed, then recovered. Claire's voice came through Reed's channel. He activated the second group. Owen's expression tightened. "What second group?" "There are insulated storage walls in the center. My father used them to hide personnel during inspections." Reed answered. "Thermal scan shows new movement behind the western section. At least 6. Owen looked at Xander. "Not on the plans." Claire's voice sounded strained. "I did not know Silas restored them." Xander checked the corridor ahead. "Where do they enter?" A pause. Then Claire answered. 2 access points. One near the central stairwell. One beside the loading corridor. Xander looked toward the red light above the next turn. The central stairwell. Evelyn was moving toward it. He ran. Evelyn heard the wall open behind her. Metal scraped against metal. She turned. A section of insulated panel had moved inward, revealing a narrow room packed with armed men. One of them shouted. Evelyn fired. The first shot struck a shoulder. The man fell backward into the others. She ran toward the staircase. Bullets struck the wall beside her. Concrete fragments cut her cheek. She reached the first step. A hand caught the back of her coat. The fabric pulled tight against her throat. Evelyn turned and drove the gun into the man's face. His grip loosened. She fired into the floor beside his foot. He recoiled. Evelyn tore free and climbed. At the top of the staircase, she found a locked steel door with a keypad. The pattern returned to her. Top left, lower center, lower right, top right. She entered 4 digits. 7, 3, 1, 9. The light remained red. Footsteps climbed behind her. She tried again. 7, 3, 1, 4. The light turned green. Evelyn opened the door and slipped through. The room beyond was not an exit. It was a narrow medical storage area. Shelves, boxes, a folding table, no second door. She closed the steel door and locked it from inside. The men outside reached it seconds later. Someone struck the metal. The entire frame shook. Evelyn backed away. Her breath came too quickly. She placed one hand over her abdomen. "No." The word came out as a whisper. She forced herself to breathe. 1, 2, 3. The door shook again. Then the men outside stopped. Gunfire erupted in the corridor. Xander reached the stairwell as the hidden squad emerged. The first man turned toward him. Xander fired twice. Owen took the second. The corridor filled with smoke-red light and deafening sound. A bullet struck the column beside Xander's head. Another broke the emergency lamp above him. Half the hallway fell into darkness. Xander moved through it. He did not think about the men falling. He did not think about Silas. He thought about the strip of fabric tied beneath the pipe. Evelyn had left it because she believed someone might follow. She had survived the forest. She had survived the room. She had not waited to be rescued. A man rushed from the side passage. Xander struck him with the weapon, drove him into the wall, and fired when the man reached for a knife. Owen shouted behind him, "Central door." Xander saw the steel door at the top of the stairs. 2 bellmen were trapped between the door and the advancing team. One fired downward. Owen jerked backward. Blood appeared across his shoulder. Xander caught him before he fell. "I am fine," Owen said through clenched teeth. "You are hit. Shoulder." Another shot struck the railing. Owen pushed Xander away. "Get to her." Xander fired toward the upper landing. One man fell. The second tried to retreat. The locked door behind him did not open. Xander climbed. The man raised his weapon. A shot came from inside the medical room. The steel door remained closed, but a bullet passed through a narrow ventilation gap and struck the man in the leg. He collapsed. Xander reached him and kicked the weapon away. Then he faced the door. "Evelyn." Silence. He placed one hand against the metal. "Evelyn, it is me." A woman's voice came from the other side. "Say something only you would know." Xander closed his eyes. Even now she was careful. He looked at the scratched paint beside the keypad. "The first painting I bought for you was ugly." Silence. "You said it looked like a horse drowning in soup." The lock released. The door opened several inches. Evelyn stood behind it, holding the gun with both hands. Her hair was tangled. Mud darkened the lower part of her coat. A cut ran across her cheek. Her wrists were raw from the restraints. Her eyes found his. For a moment, the warehouse disappeared. No gunfire, no red lights, no men shouting below, only the distance between them. Xander lowered his weapon. Evelyn did not lower hers. "You took your time," she said. His throat tightened. "I know." He stepped toward her. Evelyn moved back. "Do not touch me." Xander stopped. Her voice was steady, but her hand trembled around the gun. "Not until we are outside." He nodded. "Can you walk? I escaped the room without you." "I can see that." A burst of gunfire sounded below. Owen called from the stairs. "We need to move." Evelyn stepped into the corridor. She saw Owen holding his injured shoulder. Without hesitation, she moved toward him. "You are bleeding. It looks worse than it is. That means it is bad." She took the pressure bandage from one of the men and pressed it against the wound. Owen winced. Evelyn looked at Xander. "There are more men behind the insulated walls. We found them." "No, you found one group. I heard voices below the western loading area. At least 4. Owen looked toward the lower corridor. Xander asked, "How do you know they moved me past them earlier?" She pointed toward the red door. "There is a water exit behind that section." Silas moved a metal case toward the dock. Claire's voice came through Xander's radio, a case Evelyn recognized the voice. Her face changed. Xander saw it. Claire continued, "Evelyn, the case may contain the Bell financial records." Evelyn's eyes hardened. "You?" Claire fell silent. Xander said, "We deal with that outside." Evelyn looked at him. "You dealt with her inside our marriage?" The words struck cleanly. Owen turned toward the stairwell, giving them the small privacy of not watching. Xander accepted the blow. "You are right." Evelyn looked almost angry that he did not defend himself. Then a radio crackled on the fallen guard's belt. "Transfer team, prepare river exit." Evelyn bent and took it. A man's voice continued. "North route compromised. Move subject package to dock." Xander reached for the radio. Evelyn pulled it away. "No." She pressed the transmit button. Her voice changed. Lower, breathless, urgent. North exit breached. "Crowe team moving through freight corridor. All transfer personnel redirect west." She released the button. Static answered. Then a voice said, "Confirmed." Owen looked at her. They believed you. They have not heard me speak. Reed came through the channel, movement shifting toward the river, 4 heat signatures leaving the lower section. Xander understood immediately. They are moving into our containment team. Evelyn handed him the radio. You are welcome. They descended the stairs. The lower corridor had become a battlefield. Smoke drifted beneath the red lamps. One of Xander's men guarded the wounded attacker near the wall. Another supported Owen. Evelyn moved between them without asking permission. At the next intersection, gunfire sounded from the riverside. Reed's voice came through. Containment engaged. Small vessel starting beneath the western platform. Claire spoke. That is the maintenance channel. Xander looked toward the loading area. Silas. Evelyn heard the name. Her hand moved toward her stomach. Xander turned to her. You go with Owen. No, this building is not secure. I know. I have been inside it longer than you. Evelyn. She stepped closer. Do not use that voice with me. What voice? The one that turns every decision into an order. A sharp explosion shook the western wall. Dust fell from the ceiling. Owen said, We settle this outside. He took Evelyn gently by the arm. She allowed it because Owen asked without ownership. Xander noticed. The difference was small. It was also everything. They moved toward the eastern passage. At the loading corridor, a figure appeared above the railing. Silas Bell. He carried the metal case in one hand and a weapon in the other. Claire stood below him near the river exit. She had left Reed's vehicle and entered through the loading dock after the gunfire began. Her weapon was raised. Silas looked down at his sister. You chose him. Claire's voice shook. I chose the line you crossed. There was no line when Father died. There is now. Silas raised his gun toward her. Xander fired. The bullet struck the railing. Silas moved behind cover and ran toward the dock. Claire followed. Xander looked back at Evelyn. Owen had reached the service passage with her. Evelyn met Xander's eyes. He hesitated. She understood why. Part of him believed chasing Silas meant abandoning her again. Evelyn said, Go. Xander did not move. She continued. I am with Owen. A gunshot sounded near the river. Claire cried out. Evelyn looked toward the dock. Finish it! Xander turned and ran. Silas reached the maintenance channel and jumped onto a small industrial launch. The engine started immediately. Claire fired from the platform. The shot struck the side of the vessel. Silas returned fire. Claire dropped behind a concrete barrier. Xander reached her. Are you hit? Number blood marked her sleeve, but the wound was shallow. Silas's boat accelerated into the channel. A second boat waited beneath the main dock. Xander jumped aboard. Claire caught the rail. You cannot follow alone. He started the engine. You are staying here. He is my brother, and Evelyn is my wife. Claire released the rail. Xander pushed the throttle forward. The boat surged into the black water. The Calumet River cut through the industrial district like a strip of dark steel. Silas's vessel moved ahead beneath a raised bridge. Xander followed. Cold wind struck his face. The city lights reflected in broken lines across the water. Silas fired backward. A bullet shattered the windshield. Xander ducked, kept one hand on the wheel, and pushed closer. The boats entered a narrower channel beside an abandoned grain terminal. Silas tried to turn. Xander struck the rear corner of his vessel. Metal screamed. Both boats spun. Xander lost his footing and crashed against the side rail. Silas's boat struck an old pier and stopped. The engine continued roaring. Xander crossed the space between the vessels. Silas met him with the metal case. The corner struck Xander's shoulder. He fell to one knee. Silas swung again. Xander blocked it and drove forward. They hit the deck together. The case slid toward the edge. Silas reached for his gun. Xander caught his wrist. They struggled in the cold spray and engine smoke. There was nothing elegant in it. No clean movements, no controlled violence. Only two exhausted men trying to force the other into stillness. Silas struck Xander across the mouth. Xander tasted blood. He drove Silas against the cabin wall. Silas brought his knee into Xander's ribs. The grip broke. The gun skidded across the deck. Silas reached it first. He rose with the weapon pointed at Xander's chest. The river moved beneath them. Federal sirens sounded somewhere beyond the bridge. Silas breathed heavily. My father died calling my name. Xander remained on one knee. I know. You left him there. Yes. The answer made Silas hesitate. You destroyed my family. I destroyed his organization. You took the ports. Yes. You gave the government everything. Yes. My father begged for medical care. Xander's face changed. I knew he was sick. Silas pressed the gun forward. And I told myself it was not my responsibility. Was it no? Silas stared at him. The hatred in his face had waited 2 years for denial. Xander gave him none. Silas said, You should beg. For my life. For hers. Xander looked toward the dark river behind Silas. Evelyn never needed me to beg for her. You think rescuing her fixes what you did? No. You think she will forgive you? No. The weapon lowered slightly. Xander continued. She may leave me. She was probably going to leave me before you took her. Silas's expression shifted. Then why did you come? Because she is not mine to lose. The words surprised Xander as he said them. Silas laughed once. You built an empire around possession. I know. And now you found humility because someone touched your wife. No. Xander rose slowly. I found the truth because she survived me long enough to say it. Silas's hand shook. You turned my father into a body in a federal hospital, and you turned a pregnant woman into a weapon. She was the only thing you loved. Then you should have understood why using her made you no different from me. Silas's face twisted. I am nothing like you. You built your life around a dead man's pain. I built mine around fear. We both called it loyalty. The sirens grew louder. White lights appeared beyond the bridge. Silas looked toward them, then back at Xander. Xander could see the calculation. Shoot, run, die, become the final victim in the story he had written for himself. Xander stepped closer. If you kill me, your father remains dead. Silas's eyes burned. My family remains gone. Yes. My name remains buried. Yes. Then what is left? Xander looked at the gun. You. The answer emptied something from Silas's face. His arm lowered. Not fully. Enough. Xander could have taken the weapon. He could have broken Silas's wrist. He could have thrown him into the river and told everyone the current carried him away. Instead, he stepped back. Silas looked at him with confusion. You are not going to kill me. No. Why? Because death would let you remain the man you think grief made necessary. The first federal boat entered the channel. Xander continued. You wanted me to live with what I did. Silas looked toward the approaching lights. So do I. The gun fell from his hand. It struck the deck. The metal case had stopped near the railing. Federal agents boarded the vessel and forced Silas to the floor. Xander did not watch. He picked up the case and opened it. Inside were encrypted drives, financial ledgers, and copies of records Silas had claimed he needed Xander to retrieve. The exchange had never been necessary. Silas already possessed enough to rebuild part of the Bell network. He had wanted Xander to expose himself anyway. The negotiation had never been a trade. It had been a dismantling. Xander closed the case and handed it to the nearest agent. Then he returned to the warehouse. Evelyn sat inside the rear of an armored medical vehicle. A blanket covered her shoulders. Owen sat nearby while a medic secured his injured arm. Claire stood several yards away beneath guard. When Xander approached, Evelyn looked at the blood on his face. She said nothing. He stopped outside the open vehicle door. "The baby. The medic cannot tell." Her voice remained controlled. "We need a hospital." Xander nodded. He did not climb inside. Evelyn watched him. After several seconds, she moved her foot slightly, creating space on the opposite bench. It was not forgiveness. It was permission to sit. Xander entered and took the seat across from her. The doors closed. The vehicle moved away from the river. Chicago passed outside in pieces of sodium light and wet glass. Xander looked at Evelyn's hands. The skin around her wrists was torn. A bruise darkened her jaw. He wanted to touch her. He did not. Evelyn kept her eyes on the window. "I was not coming to save our marriage." Xander's breathing slowed. "I know. No, you do not." She looked at him. "I came to tell you about the baby. Then I was going to give you the divorce papers." Xander absorbed the words without looking away. "You still can." Evelyn studied his face. There was blood at the corner of his mouth. His shoulder had begun to swell beneath his shirt. He looked less like the man who owned half the room wherever he stood. He looked tired, human. Too late. "I know," she said. The vehicle continued toward the hospital. Xander had crossed the city, entered a fortress, and dragged an enemy from the river. None of it changed the space between him and his wife. For the first time, he did not try to close it. The hospital room was quiet except for the monitor beside Evelyn's bed. A green line moved across the screen with steady precision. Xander stood near the door while the doctor examined the ultrasound image. He had been allowed inside only after Evelyn finished the first examination. Until then, he had waited in the hallway with dried blood on his shirt and river water still darkening the cuffs of his pants. No one had asked him to leave. No one had invited him closer. Through the partially open door, he had heard a sound he did not recognize at first. Fast, soft, persistent, the heartbeat of his child. It stopped him in the middle of the corridor. For years, men had spoken to Xander about numbers, shipments, payments, territory, losses. Nothing had ever carried the weight of that sound. The doctor lowered the device and looked at Evelyn. "The heartbeat is strong." Evelyn closed her eyes. Only for a second. Xander saw her shoulders release. The doctor continued. "You are dehydrated and badly exhausted. The stress was significant, but there is no evidence of immediate harm to the pregnancy." Evelyn placed one hand over her abdomen. "What should I watch for?" The doctor explained the symptoms that would require immediate attention. Evelyn listened carefully. Xander listened too, though no one looked at him. When the doctor left, silence settled between them. Evelyn stared at the ultrasound image on the bedside table. The photograph was creased and stained near one corner. Silas's men had removed it from her coat, then placed it with her belongings before the transfer. Xander moved toward the chair beside the wall. He stopped before sitting. "May I?" Evelyn looked at the chair, then at him. "Yes." He sat. The distance between them was only several feet. It felt larger than the river. Evelyn studied the bruises across his face. "You should have someone look at your shoulder. It can wait." "No." Her voice was flat. "Do not turn pain into a performance." Xander looked down. All right. A nurse had already cleaned the cut on his mouth. His shoulder would be examined later. Evelyn returned her attention to the ultrasound. After a long silence, she asked how long Xander knew what she meant. The emotional affair began 4 months ago. And the rest? After you moved out. Evelyn looked at him. You say that as if I moved out first. I know I started it before you left. Then say it correctly. Xander held her gaze. I was unfaithful before you left. I allowed Claire into parts of my life I had already closed to you. Then I slept with her after you moved out. The words remained in the room. Evelyn's face did not change. That was worse than anger. Did you love her? No. She gave a quiet laugh. It held no humor. You think that helps? No. It makes it cheaper. Xander said nothing. Evelyn continued. You did not betray me for love. You betrayed me because she was easier. Yes. The answer surprised her. For years, Xander had defended every choice until the truth became exhausted. Now he gave her nowhere to push. Evelyn looked away. You saw my calls. Yes. All 14. Yes. And you decided not to answer. Yes. Her eyes filled, but she did not let the tears fall. Xander's hands tightened against his knees. I left you on that road. Silas left me on that road. I made sure you were alone. Evelyn looked at him again. He continued. I ignored you because I did not want to face what I had done. Men took you because of my enemies, but you were outside that gate because of me. You do not get credit for understanding now. I know. Her expression hardened. Stop saying that. Xander went still. Evelyn pulled the blanket higher over her legs. I heard those words from you for years. I know you are unhappy. I know you feel alone. I know I missed dinner. I know I forgot the appointment. Her voice shook. You knew everything and changed nothing. Xander took the words without interrupting. Evelyn looked toward the dark window. The city lights reflected faintly in the glass. Saving me does not erase it. I am not asking it to. You chased Silas across the river. You were willing to die. Yes. But you could not answer the phone. Xander lowered his eyes. No. That is the part I cannot understand. He looked at her. I could fight Silas. And me. You required honesty. The answer entered the room quietly. Xander continued. I knew how to survive enemies. I did not know how to stand in front of someone I had disappointed and remain there. Evelyn's eyes moved over his face. You did not fail because you did not know how. No, you failed because leaving was easier. Yes. For the first time, the agreement did not sound like surrender. It sounded like responsibility. Evelyn rested her head against the pillow. I am not going back to the estate. I understand. I will choose where I live. Yes. The security team reports to me. Yes. You do not enter without permission. Yes. You do not monitor my calls, my medical records, my car, or my bank account. Yes. You tell me everything. Xander was silent. Evelyn watched him. Everything means the names, the companies, the government contacts, the people who want you dead, and every threat that could reach me or this child. He nodded. You will have it. I want it written. You will. And if there is one lie, one missing name, one part you decide I am better off not knowing, you lose access to both of us. The sentence struck deeper than any wound he carried. Xander did not argue. I understand. Evelyn closed her eyes. This time, when she spoke, her voice was softer. That is not forgiveness. I know. She opened her eyes. He stopped himself before repeating the phrase. It is not forgiveness, he said. It is the minimum I owe you. Evelyn studied him. Then she looked toward the ultrasound image. Outside the room, Owen stood with his arm in a sling while Reed spoke to federal agents. Silas Bell had been taken into custody. The metal case recovered from the boat contained copied financial records, access codes, and a list of remaining Bell properties. The evidence was enough to destroy the network Silas had spent 2 years rebuilding. Claire sat under guard at the end of the corridor. When Evelyn was discharged 2 days later, Claire asked to speak with her. Xander did not interfere. Evelyn met Claire in a private consultation room. Claire looked smaller without the confidence she had worn inside the Crowe estate. "I am sorry," she said. Evelyn remained near the door. "For which part?" Claire swallowed. "All of it." "That is not specific. For entering his life under a false name. For sleeping with him. For standing in front of that window because I knew you might see us." Evelyn's face became very still. Claire continued. "I told myself you were part of his world. I made you less human so I could live with what I was doing." Evelyn looked at her for several seconds. "You were not the reason my husband betrayed me." Claire lowered her eyes. "You were only the person he chose." The words left Claire without defense. Evelyn opened the door. "I hope you tell the truth when they question you." "I will." Evelyn paused. "Not for me." Then she left. Thomas Keene gave Reed the full communication archive. His cooperation helped federal investigators locate 3 remaining Bell sites and identify the men involved in Evelyn's abduction. Xander did not kill him. Thomas and his daughter entered protective custody. Before leaving Chicago, Thomas sent Evelyn a letter. She did not open it. She placed it inside a drawer and decided she would read it only when his guilt no longer felt like another demand placed on her. Owen reorganized Evelyn's security under a separate command structure. The first time he brought her the personnel files, he placed them on her table and waited. Evelyn selected every member herself. No one reported to Xander. 3 weeks after the kidnapping, Xander ordered the iron gates removed from the Lake Forest estate. The workers arrived before sunrise. Owen watched from the drive while heavy machinery pulled the black metal from the ground. "You are reducing the perimeter," he said. Xander stood with his hands in his coat pockets. "I built barriers and called them protection. The barriers were not the problem." "No." Xander watched the gate rise from the mud. "I was." He began dismantling other parts of his life more quietly. Several violent operations were closed. Information was turned over through negotiated federal channels. The rooms beneath the estate that had been used for interrogation were emptied. None of it made him innocent. It only prevented him from using the same machinery while claiming he wanted to become different. 3 months later, Evelyn lived in a brownstone in Lincoln Park. She chose the house because it had wide windows, a small garden, and no gate. The baby was healthy. Xander attended medical appointments only when invited. He arrived early and waited in the hallway. One morning, Evelyn found him sitting outside the clinic with a thick folder on his lap. He stood when she approached. "What is that?" "Everything you asked for." She took the folder. Inside were company names, account structures, enemies, alliances, government contacts, and the full history of the Bell operation. Nothing had been softened. Nothing had been hidden behind language designed to protect her. Evelyn closed the folder. "Is this everything?" "It is everything I know. And if you learn more, you learn it the same day." She held his gaze. Then she entered the clinic carrying the folder. She did not ask him to follow. Xander sat down again. A minute later, the door opened. Evelyn looked at him. "The doctor is ready." He stood. She stepped aside. That evening, rain moved softly against the windows of Evelyn's brownstone. Xander received a message shortly after 8. "The baby is moving. Come if you want." He arrived 20 minutes later. He stood outside beneath the porch light. Evelyn opened the door. "Why did you not knock?" You said no unannounced visits. I invited you. You invited me to come. You did not invite me inside. Evelyn watched him. The old Xander would have crossed the threshold and explained his intention afterward. This man waited. She stepped back. You can come in. He entered. They sat at opposite ends of the sofa. For several minutes, neither spoke. Then Evelyn reached for his hand. She placed it against her abdomen. At first there was nothing. Xander remained completely still. Then the baby moved beneath his palm. His breath caught. Evelyn watched his face. The feared man who controlled rooms routes and people stared at her stomach as if the smallest movement had undone every certainty he had ever carried. He looked at her. Evelyn removed his hand gently. This does not mean we are fixed. I understand. It does not mean I forgive you. I understand. She looked toward the window. It means you are here tonight. Xander nodded. Then I am here tonight. Outside, the rain continued over Chicago. There were no guards at the door, no iron gate between them. Only a quiet room, a child moving beneath Evelyn's heart, and a man learning that staying required more courage than possession ever had.